Hey everybody, I'm Tyler Suiters with the Consumer Technology Association. We are the owners and the producers of CES, the world's largest, most influential tech event there is. We are here to help you get CES ready. The show is January 7th through the 10th, 2020 in Las Vegas, our home away from home. And today we're taking a deep dive into the world of drones, a major holiday gift idea and purchase for U.S. consumers several years ago continues to grow not only in consumer popularity, but also in use cases for businesses and entrepreneurs and professionals around the country. And that's setting aside the use that emergency responders have for drones in finding people in need, rescuing those who are lost, and also even more everyday tasks like helping work crews who are charged with repairs and maintenance of high or dangerous structures. Well, these drones can keep those people on the ground while the drones go hundreds and hundreds of feet in the air to do the job. Today, a deep dive conversation with, first of all, the new administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. Very cool conversation. He is a former fighter pilot, so has a clear-cut view on the potential for drones, but also has a pretty complicated responsibility in what is a rapidly changing U.S. airspace. Also, you may have seen some headlines around this. Drone deliveries are now underway here in the U.S. Products getting to consumers faster and more efficiently than ever. It's a small location, but one of the public-private programs in that area of Virginia where this is happening is taking place around Virginia Tech. We are talking with the director of the program there, not only a pilot, also an aircraft mechanic. Today, a look at drones on CES Tech Talk. Joining us now, it is a pleasure to have Administrator Steve Dixon with us here, a true expert on aviation writ large. Administrator, thank you so much for your time.
It's great to be with you, Tyler. Thank you for spending the time with us this morning.
Certainly. Drones are getting more and more popular by the year. The ownership numbers we track are continuing to climb. That leaves a lot of first-time pilots out there, first-time users. Education is a big aspect regarding the drone sector, and a lot of that falls on FAA, correct?
Absolutely. And from experience in my family, I'd like to start out with this is something that's very close to home to me. My son has his own videography business, and as soon as I was confirmed as administrator, he had his license renewed so he could have my signature at the bottom of it. And,
and comply with federal law? Yeah.
Absolutely. But I've learned a lot from him already. It's a part of aviation as a commercial pilot and as a former military pilot that is new for me. But I think it's a reflection of how exciting of a time this is in our business.
So basic rules, basic guidelines apply to everyone, whether you're a former pilot, a current licensed pilot, or you're simply opening a box on the holidays. It's been under the tree. What are the guidelines you think are just paramount for everyone who's
Well, I think to start with, if you remember that if you're a pilot or if you're a drone pilot, you're a pilot. There are rules that you've got to follow, and our strategy here in the United States is to integrate drones into the aviation system, not to segregate. And in order to be able to do that, we've got rules that we've got to comply with, and we've got the certification rules that we've got to comply with as well. And so it's very important to know what the rules are and to follow them. And that's ultimately going to be beneficial for everyone because that's going to allow us to get to a truly integrated system.
So with that in mind, what's the best resource for a newly christened pilot? And by that I mean someone who is just opening the box on their first drone to find out what the rules are. Not the rules that you should follow, but really the rules you must follow when you have a drone in the air in the United States.
Well, it really, for a first-time drone pilot, the first thing that you need to do is, again, realize that you're now a pilot flying in the airspace with airplanes. And then right after that, make sure you register your drone with the FAA. It's a quick online process. It costs only $5. You go to FAA.gov/UAS to register and learn the rules and tips for flying safely. There's a lot of information there. And drone pilots should also be aware of local and state laws about drone operations.
So if we could, Administrator, you mentioned earlier your experience as a pilot. What's your vision for both the drone integration, but also what needs to be done, because you have a unique firsthand perspective as a pilot in the airspace, and you know both the challenges and opportunities involved?
Sure, it's a great question, and as we say, we want to integrate drones into the system, but it's a challenge because we have a very safe and stable system in the United States. In fact, it's engineered to what we call 10 to the minus ninth safety risk, which means a 1 in a billion chance of any kind of accident or incident. So, but if you manage new entrants this way, such as drones are, you don't have the kind of innovation and the kind of progress that you really want to have. So we've got to be able to, as we work towards the building blocks of being able to integrate drones in the system, we've got to make sure that we're proceeding very methodically along as we go. And so the FAA's got to be able, as a regulator, to stay ahead of the pace of change, but also take account of the non-safety interests, such as privacy and security. A number of other federal, state, and local agencies have a big interest in how we manage the airspace in the United States, and that's our job, to make sure that we take all of that into account as we're developing the rules. So it may seem like things are not going as quickly as they need to be, but we're trying to develop a system that will work for all stakeholders. And if you can do it in the United States, you can do it anywhere else in the world.
And balancing safety and innovation at every step, certainly. You mentioned a methodical approach. Any surprises, anything that has caught you a bit, if not off guard, just something that was unexpected?
It's I wouldn't say necessarily any surprises, but we are making a lot of progress. We call our airspace system the National Airspace System, or the NAS, so I may use that nomenclature here in our conversation. We're developing and delivering new rules so drones can become regular participants in NAS operations rather than special one-offs that require a waiver or an exemption. I mean, that's really what we want to do, is make it a normal part of our national airspace ecosystem, if you will. The UAS Integration Pilot Program, or IPP, was launched by Secretary Chow 2 years ago, and it's moving this integration process forward. The IPP allows for 9 state and local and tribal governments across the U.S. to partner with industry to help us develop UAS regulations, policy, and guidance through some practical applications. Perhaps more importantly, they become the match that's lighting a creative fire in the industry and the public for what this novel new form of transportation might achieve. Also, the Unmanned Aircraft System Traffic Management Pilot Program, or UPP, is making concrete progress towards full UAS integration. We launched that program about 3 years ago, and that helps us figure out how to do air traffic management for drones. If you think about air traffic controllers controlling piloted airplanes, whether for general aviation or military aircraft or commercial aircraft, the UPP program is helping us how to do the same thing with drones. And it's essentially a set of concepts and tools that we're developing with the industry to safely manage dense, low-altitude drone operations. It's not a specific equipment system, as we see with manned air traffic control. It'll be complementary to the existing traffic management system. It won't replace it. And we're also working closely with NASA to do this work. NASA has been a valued partner over the years in terms of being able to help us develop new innovative approaches to being able to solving complex issues like this.
So, Mr. Administrator, you mentioned the idea of use cases, right, both potential and actual. What has you excited about that? There's so many opportunities, whether it's health and wellness, disaster recovery and mitigation. where is your interest drawn?
Well, it's interesting. There are use cases throughout our economy and throughout our system. There are also some use cases that apply specifically to aviation that you might not think about. For example, an airline that has to do a lightning strike inspection on an airplane to get it back in service. So if you're flying around convective weather in the summertime, sometimes you have lightning strikes where you have to have a maintenance technician get up on a lift and look at an airplane, and it can take several hours to get the airplane inspected and repaired and get it back in service. With the ability to be able to do this same kind of activity with a drone, even within the airport airspace, within the hangar area, can cut down that time by several orders of magnitude, and also is better for workplace safety because we don't have to have people up on a high lift, around the tail of an aircraft when they're inspecting it. Some other examples we see in the construction industry. Cinema, photography. My son has his own videography business. He's using drones quite extensively. Pipeline inspection, agriculture, public safety, energy surveying, mapping, firefighting. A whole bunch of applications that are really exciting.
Sure. I even think about the more day-to-day aspects. If you've seen a sweeping shot in a movie by a drone, you remember it, right? That
absolutely
that absolutely sticks with you.
Absolutely. I mean, as we were going through the working with the Bahamian authorities after Dorian, a lot of the initial assessment of what we were really seeing with the airports and the aviation infrastructure was accomplished through the use of drone technology.
So when you talk about your audiences, Mr. Administrator, you have one side with I'll call it traditional aviation, but your pilot community from which you come, where it's such a rigorous process, so much training goes into it. And now with drones, you have a very consumer-centric audience. Is there a clear message or something that you very much want to say to consumers to make sure they know before they take to the skies?
Well, I think the most important point is if you're operating a drone, you are a pilot. So we look at you from my perspective, and you should look at yourself as going through the same rigor in terms of your certification as a pilot of an aircraft. And so with that, categorization, if you will, that there's a lot of responsibility that falls on the individual operator's shoulders. The margin of safety that we have, we want to continue to be able to improve our margin of safety, and we want to be able to integrate drones within a very safe, stable system. That's got to be done very thoughtfully, and so it is important that we're all aligned and that everyone understands that we are, as an agency, very heavily invested in the safety and success of all pilots, including pilots of UAS. So, an uninformed recreational flyer in the wrong place at the wrong time could ruin everybody's day and really set us back. So we want to make sure that those kinds of things don't happen.
Well, what about that first audience I mentioned, your fellow pilots, so to speak? It seems like their temptations to go outside the rules, whether they know them or not, could have even greater consequences, right? When you're talking about safety operations.
Sure. I think, and this goes for pilots of manned aircraft and manned as well. But I think one of the most important things to keep in mind is to not interfere with emergency operations. And again, we saw this a little bit out in the Bahamas. There were a lot of folks who wanted to get out there and wanted to help with some of the provisions and resupply operations, so there were a lot of general aviation aircraft that were kind of in the way of C-17s and larger commercial aircraft that were trying to get in there and provide assistance at scale. And if you see something like a helicopter flying to fight a wildfire, as an example that you might see in the drone community, that doesn't mean you can fly your drone. You're not going to be helpful by trying to get involved in that operation. You may force emergency operations to stop, which could cost lives or delay incident response. It's also a good reminder for us to check out NOTAMs. I mean, NOTAMs are a big notices to airmen. They're a big part of the responsibility that any aviator has, equally for drone pilots and for pilots of manned aircraft. And that's kind of the daily rules of the road, of where the threats are and the areas that we need to avoid, or actions that we need to take to mitigate safety risk or the opportunity to maybe be where we're not supposed to be. So it's important that we're following those rules as well. And then finally, if we've got flight restrictions for sporting events or special events, concerts at stadiums and other locations, flying in those areas inappropriately could result in severe fines and even criminal prosecution if it's egregious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every college football or pro football game has 84 cameras already in place in and around a stadium. They don't need any help. Not to make light of that whatsoever, but if the best thing that any pilot can do with the drone in those situations, Mr. Administrator, is knowing the rules and obeying them, a real onus then on Drone Safety Awareness Week coming up, right? A great way to get that word out and explain to pilots current and future what they need to do and how they need to act.
Absolutely, and thank you for mentioning Drone Safety Awareness Week. We are going to really highlight drone safety during the first annual National Drone Safety Awareness Week, which will be November 4th through 10th. And we're partnering with two safety organizations. They're called Know Before You Fly and the UAS Safety Team. And this is a great opportunity for the drone community to help educate the public about drone safety. It'll highlight how key sectors are involving the public and spreading awareness about drone safety across the entire national airspace system. And we also want to engage with students and teachers about using drones in STEM education. And there's a targeted audience for each day of the event. So I think it'll be a really interesting event for everyone.
Administrator Dixon, you're charged with a serious role protecting our airspace, and integration clearly on your priority list as well. A pleasure to talk to you today. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise.
Oh, absolutely. And I look forward to, I know we'll have a big presence at this year's CES, and we look forward to engaging and continuing the dialogue. And hopefully, I haven't checked my calendar that far out yet, but hopefully I'll be able to appear personally, and look forward to meeting everyone.
Yeah, the invitation is outstanding, just to be clear.
All right, thank you. Pleasure to talk to you today.
Joining us now from southwestern Virginia and the campus of Virginia Tech is Mark Blanks. He is director of the Virginia Tech Mid-Atlantic Aviation Partnership. Mark, great to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on board today.
So all of a sudden, Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia, little corner of southwest Virginia, finds itself as one of the epicenters of drone testing. Give us an update on what you all have going on right now and how the heck you got there to the top of the drone heap, so to speak.
And so Southwest Virginia has been a hub for unmanned aircraft or drone activity for the past several years. And now we're running a FAA designated UAS test site or drone test site. We're also running a FAA integration pilot program, which is another testing program. And then we have a lot of research going on with NASA and other federal agencies. And that's really come about by just having a real strong support from our university, from the Commonwealth, as well as a lot of talent at this campus to really start putting together the team that could address some of these challenges.
So if you could dive into that a bit, Mark, how do you assemble your team? And I know I say relatively new to the Virginia Tech program, but the Tech program really has been on a nationally prominent level for just a few years. How do you find your way to Virginia Tech, and how does this program get to such prominence?
Yeah, so I've been here at Virginia Tech for about 4 years, and I came here through a around the country route. I started out in Tennessee and then was recruited out to Kansas State University. Great program, great place in Kansas. But then the mountains were calling back here to Virginia Tech and came here in 2015. And so my background is as an aviation mechanic as well as a pilot, having been involved with a lot of different technology in flight tests from the manned aviation side through getting the drones about 10 years ago now, and really came to Virginia Tech because of the credibility that was already established here, a very well-known name, it was the start of a new test site program, a lot of great opportunity to build something. And when I moved here, there were 5 of us on board. I came in as the associate director and moved to director shortly thereafter. And our team now has grown. We probably have 20 to 30 people, depending on how you count us. We're doing all this great work.
And Virginia Tech is an FAA designated UAS test site. So you have government stamp of approval. And also, and this happened more recently, a select member of the UAS Integration Pilot Program. And I should say for everyone who's outside the DC and federal government spectrum, UAS is the acronym I know that FAA prefers for the drone sector. But it's this great relationship. You have a green light within boundaries from the federal government to fly. I'd assume, given your background and just rattling off a few cities where you've lived professionally, Tullahoma, Tennessee, Manhattan, Kansas, Blacksburg, Virginia, the rural nature has got to be a boon too, right? To have that kind of geographic space and atmosphere to work and test.
Yeah, so low population densities are conducive to doing testing, although I will say that a lot of our testing now is about moving more into the urban environment, and that actually starts to be a bit of a downside as we look for more populated areas. But it is a great place to fly here. We have a green light by the FAA essentially to do testing with appropriate safety cases. It's not just that we can go fly and do anything we want. What we really have through those programs is a very collaborative relationship with the FAA, a two-way communication, dialogue, support from their side and our side to build together a safety case for each operation that can be shown to be safe. And that's really what that is about. It's not as much about just going out and flying. It's more about the relationship and showing how things can be done safely and doing research as needed to evaluate that.
What are some of those case scenarios, Mark, that you could talk about and either are in progress or you've made significant progress and are maybe wrapping up?
We've got 3 big projects right now under our integration pilot program. The first is package delivery, where we're working with Wing, which is a sister company of Google. The second is post-event damage assessment, for example, after a disaster, working with an insurance company, in this case State Farm. And then the third is doing linear infrastructure inspection on power lines and to prevent power lines being damaged, as well as to recover from damage to them. And there we're working with Dominion Energy. A good way to overview, though, what we do, I'll take State Farm as an example. We've been working with State Farm for about 3 years now. They came to us already flying drones. They were already doing roof inspections one-on-one. They really wanted to go further and be able to assess large areas of damage after a major event. And instead of, we didn't just have a green light to go fly, we had to build that safety case to get to that green light. And so we spent the next year and a half doing research, collecting flight test data, and then proving to the FAA all the different risks and how they had been mitigated successfully, to where they got an approval in December of last year to fly anywhere in the country over people and beyond line of sight for the purpose of doing damage assessment. So that's really what we do with companies. We take them from an idea of how it can benefit their business through the safety process to get them the approval from the FAA at the end of the day.
And probably the highest profile of those partnerships, Mark, has got to be with Google's Wing project, right? Not too long ago, it just received approval for package delivery, right? Commercial package delivery over general population, beyond line of sight. And it's taken place just a little bit to the north of Blacksburg in Christiansburg. So I'm sure you're deeply involved and quite curious about how that's progressing.
Yeah, we have been working very closely with Wing for a number of years. They did their first test in the U.S. of actually President's first test anywhere of delivering goods to people back in 2016. Here it was a very limited trial. It was not residential. It was actually on a campus facility. But yes, last week they launched the first ever residential drone delivery system, where right now, at this time, I could drive across town and order a package and have it delivered by drone currently. So that has been launched. And that's really based upon a long-term relationship where we have worked with Wing, FAA, and Virginia Tech, and the community especially, all together, talking through not only the safety aspects, but also the community aspects of how this will benefit community and how we might address any concerns that come up.
Yes.
And it took a lot of work to get there.
Yes, that's a great point, Mark. How do those conversations with the community go? I assume it's a roundabout process of hearing concerns, alleviating or mitigating doubts and unwarranted fears, and then presenting the use case scenarios and the benefits that really affect people's lives and change them for the better.
That's a pretty good summary. We really believe that the worst thing that we could do is introduce a new technology, especially one that interacts as closely with the public as drone delivery does, without sharing a lot of information and being very transparent about what's happening. That could create a lot of fear. And so as we gained the FAA approvals to do the actual operations, we really had to launch a community engagement process, because the FAA could approve it, but if the community rejects it, then we might as well disappear, and it will disappear. So we went out to the community, went to festivals, to the mall, to a food truck rodeo, to farmers markets and other places, and had public presences where people could stop in and ask us questions, and we could respond to them. And quite frankly, the community was just overwhelmingly supportive and positive. Mm-hmm. And those that did have concerns, once we explained the technology and how we would do this, they were very much relieved and very happy to see it coming to a small town in Southwest Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you said earlier, Mark, a rural area is ideal for testing, certainly, just given the low population density. But it seems like that's also representative of a large part of the country, and you could extrapolate that across the world, certainly, but where immediate delivery is critical, and drones can enable this when we're talking about emergency situations, medical supplies that are in immediate need, or even remote areas where it might be a 2.5-hour drive up and over a mountain or across tough to navigate roads, where drones can get people what they need when they need it much more quickly and efficiently.
Absolutely. I will note, though, that when we're doing these deliveries in Christiansburg, it's actually more like suburbia America mm-hmm. than it is rural environment. We're, mm-hmm. we're delivering to subdivisions that have hundreds of homes in them. So if you look at the amount of suburbia America across the country, you could probably capture some very large percentage portion of the population with exactly what we're doing in Christiansburg. We have done tests in even more rural areas, where I live, which is quite a ways out of town. But the value benefit is beyond just long distance flights. It's also, I've got a sick kid who feels horrible, and I don't want to put him in the car because I got to go get medicine at the store. Now it can come to me in less than 10 minutes. And we've seen that. Deliveries that would take, or even a car drive that would take 20 minutes, we've seen happen in 3 minutes by aircraft. So it's quite amazing.
So when you run through your partners there at Virginia Tech, Mark, and Google seems like an obvious connection, right? An innovative tech company that wants to get into this space, and I would add is in this space. But then you look at the other two partners, an insurance company that's well known, and then a regional power provider. So the insurance sector, the energy sector, obvious beneficiaries of drones once you delve into the use cases. What's another sector that you want to partnership, a sector that you really see benefits coming from the use and understanding and application of drone technology?
This is one of those things where you could literally name an industry and probably find a great use case for drones. There's certainly no cure-all, and then I want to be very clear that they are a new tool in the toolbox. But for many, many, many industries, they bring great value. I personally have been very passionate about the surveying and mapping industry because of how many different people it affects. But that industry has actually adopted this technology quite well. So as far as one that is a new or novel use case, might need a few more minutes to think about one that I would particularly choose to highlight. Mm-hmm. But I will know that we find that there are the number of possible benefits are just unbelievable, and there you can just imagine some of the use cases we've heard. But it's even some of the ones that are not as well known are actually some of the most valuable ones. And I think I mentioned surveying, land surveying, and assessment of property is incredibly easy to do with a drone and quick. Think about clearing traffic jams, doing an accident investigation.
Mm-hmm.
That, if you could reduce a crash on I-66 going into DC by 30 minutes, you could save probably millions of dollars of people's time that might be stuck in that traffic.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And that's someone who knows DC area traffic, speaking from an expert perspective, yes. Mark, no question. Look, before you roll, I can't believe you haven't been out to CES. What do we need to do to get you out here, huh?
Make me a home there. I'll be there. I think actually Virginia Tech is we're going to have a booth there, but it's our Transportation Institute that does a lot of automated ground vehicles work. And we might just need to partner with them and see if we can make it out there ourselves. We'd love to see the show.
I love it. Mark Blanks is director of the Virginia Tech Mid-Atlantic Aviation Partnership. He is a pilot, a mechanic, and clearly a drone enthusiast, and really on the cutting edge of the research that's taking place around the country right now. Mark, pleasure for your time, and let's keep this conversation going next year, all right?
All right, sounds great to me. Thanks.
All right, awesome conversation about drones. And coming up next time on CES Tech Talk, a cool and emerging and maybe you'd say exponential growth potential area, that is gaming and esports. Professional leagues are taking off, gamers are growing in numbers, and the technology involved is better than ever, as is the connectivity. All of that is coming up on our next edition of CES Tech Talk. We are here to help you get CES ready, so do yourself and do us a favor. Subscribe to the CES Tech Talk podcast. That way, you won't miss a single episode as we're prepping you up for CES 2020. Speaking of, the big show is January 7th through the 10th in Las Vegas. The information you need is at ces.tech. That is ces.tech. As always, none of this would be possible without the true superstars of this podcast. Our executive producer, Tina Anthony, and our senior studio engineer, John Lindsay. You all are the best in the business. I'm Tyler Suiters. Let's talk tech again soon.